It was a history-making year in the House of Representatives for all the wrong reasons. First, Republicans took 15 ballots just to elect a speaker, the most since the Civil War. They made history again when just months later they ousted that speaker. Then the House was effectively shut down for 3 weeks as Republicans tried and failed over and over and over to choose a new speaker. And they finally elected a new speaker. One of their first orders of business and highest priorities was to launch a sham impeachment inquiry of President Biden. And now there are reports that they could slow walk that investigation, drawing it out during an election year. That inquiry is one of the only achievements of this Congress. Look at this chart from Axios. Using data compiled by the data analytics firm Quorum, it shows that the number of laws passed by each two-year congressional session since 1989. Hundreds of bills until you get to right now. Halfway through the 118th congressional session. See that tiny sliver of red at the end? That represents the 20 bills that passed both chambers and became law this year. And the additional 4 bills awaiting President Biden's signature. And the vast majority of those bills were pretty minor, like, quote, multiple measures to rename Veterans Affairs clinics and another to mint a coin commemorating the 250th anniversary of the Marine Corps. Congressman Jasmine Crockett is a Democrat from Texas who serves on the Oversight Committee, and she joins me now. Congresswoman Crockett, it is an honor to speak to you for reasons I'm going to explain when we talk. I have to start with this. You are a freshman in Congress, right? This is your first time in the job, but you have been a state legislator before. Have you been shocked at the lack of productivity and functionality that you've seen in Congress since you got into office?
Absolutely. First of all, it's great to see you, Jason. And, you know, coming out of one of the craziest sessions in the Texas House as a freshman, and then coming to the U.S. House, I thought, well, nothing can get crazier, but clearly I spoke too soon. These guys are not serious. And at the end of the day, what Democrats need to go ahead and say over and over and over is you can't believe their lying mouths. As soon as they talk, a lie is coming out because we can just look at the numbers. The data shows that they're not delivering. And if you don't want to listen to us or listen to the data, then listen to my good friend Chip Roy out of the state of Texas when he says that they have not done anything. We need to make sure that we get serious people elected into office and get this country moving in the proper direction.
To quote one of my favorite shows, these are not serious people. And it makes it difficult to do the people's work. An example of this, I've got to lay this out. So you have the Oversight Committee making one of their priorities heading into 2024 this impeachment into Joe Biden. And they're looking for seeking any communications between the White House and lawyers for Hunter Biden about efforts to depose the president's son as part of their impeachment inquiry. The GOP chairman said they're seeking to determine whether the president was involved in his son's decision not to comply with congressional subpoena. Look, I've made it abundantly clear that I don't think that any sort of investigation into Hunter Biden is really worth the people's time, not when you've got Jared and Ivanka walking around the country. But as a member of Congress and being on the Oversight Committee, what's your response when you hear that your colleagues want to spend the people's time investigating Hunter Biden instead of addressing gas prices, inflation, healthcare, the environment, the kinds of things that people actually want to vote on?
Yeah, you know, it outrages me. And so most of the time when I'm in oversight, you see me get snarky, you see me get passionate, and that is because when I was sent to D.C., I was sent to D.C. to work. I have a district where 20% of my population live at or below poverty. They need me to bring real results home because it can be life or death. In Texas, we lead in uninsured. In North Texas specifically, in my district, we lead in the entire state. So we have real issues. I didn't campaign on nonsense. I campaigned on bettering people's lives. That means economically, that means in the housing sphere, that means in education, that means in freedom overall. These are the things I campaigned on. And so I really want to do the people's work. But let me tell you this, Jason. One of the amazing things about coming into this session has been all the amazing work that went into the last session. I've been able to just drop off check after check after check. I brought home almost $200 million to my district, not because of anything happened in this session, but because of everything that happened when Joe Biden had a Democratic House as well as a Democratic Senate.
So I want to say this. You are the most shared member of Congress amongst my students. You went on The Breakfast Club recently. I want to play you some audio from that, get your thoughts on the other side and what your impact might be as a sort of surrogate in 2024.
Because I feel like you need people like her to be translators, right?
Absolutely.
Because I've always felt like the messaging from the Democratic Party sucks. You know what I mean? So
that's the nice way of putting it. Yeah, okay.
She's been able to translate it in a very digestible way for people.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's just one of those things. I say that Democrats love to write a thesis.
Yes.
When really, when it comes to the Republicans, they like, what are note cards? Like, what are cliff notes? Mm-hmm. And that's what we need to do. People are busy trying to figure out how they're going to keep a roof over their head, keep food in their bellies, keep gas in the car. And we're giving out what literally.
So, Congressman Crockett, one of the reasons, like I said, that I mentioned that I have my students, I'm a professor at Morgan State University, it's HBCU. You are actually a member of Congress that my students know of. What do you think your role could be in 2024 as a surrogate who actually seems to be able to deliver a message? Because one of the biggest reasons for Biden's sort of questionable poll numbers is because young people, especially young black people and people of color, seem to think he doesn't have a message for them.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris are reelected, and not necessarily because they're Democrats. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with democracy in and of itself. And I think that I make it plain. So many people are trying to make it about the individuals themselves. And to be clear, they both have amazing records to run on. I don't want to diminish that, right? But we've got to make sure that when we're telling the stories about their record, that we're telling them in ways that people can understand. We also have to make sure that we let people know that Trump is an existential threat to all of us. And as I said when I did that interview, we won't always agree. We don't always agree with our spouses. But that doesn't mean that we don't love them. That doesn't mean that they're not going to act in what they believe is our best interest. Right. And that is the point right now. I can tell you, thank God my district probably doesn't pay attention to every single vote that I make. But, you know, I'm sure that somebody disagrees with a vote here and there. But at the end of the day, you got to know that my heart is in the right place and I'm doing everything that I can. And that's the exact same thing that we're getting out of the president. You may not agree with everything this administration does, but just know that they are doing their darndest. When they tried to deliver on student loan debt, they didn't get to because of what Trump had done, right? Because of who he had put on the Supreme Court as he stole seats. It's not that they're not trying. And I also need people to understand that he's not the president of the world. A president is a president for us of the United States. And we have two other branches. So y'all need to pay attention to who all is going to be on this team to help this president execute an agenda that we can all live with.
Very quickly, one of your colleagues that you have often had to put in their place, Lauren Boebert, has recently announced that she is going to be running in a different congressional district in 2024. I guess they can make her appear there if they say her name 3 times. What do you think that indicates about the fact that, you know, this member of Congress who is a firebrand and insurrectionist often isn't necessarily doing their job, now has to flee to another district to possibly get back into Congress?
Yeah, I think that this is the warning sign that the Republicans know. They can see what's happening. They know that a Lauren Boebert, and honestly, it doesn't really matter what Republican you run in that district. When we look at the Republicans that are currently sitting in the House, regardless of what they say, they elected unanimously to put MAGA Mike at the head of the House. So I don't care if they say they're middle ground. I don't care if they want to claim that they're not like the Lauren Boeberts of the world, but they did that along with voting for the impeachment inquiry on Joe Biden, even when people like Ken Buck said there's not enough here. So let me tell you, right now, Republicans are all MAGA based on their voting record, but they know that a Lauren Boebert cannot win in a swing district.
Congressman Jasmine Crockett, thank you much for joining us this evening.
Good to see you.